Hey Soda Surfers, I'm Mr. Spork and these are Mr. Spork's hands. I promised you guys in my latest SodaStream update video that I would show you how I make my red tonic, my fake cranberry cooler, my agua de Jamaica, whatever you call it in your neighborhood. The secret ingredient is this stuff, hibiscus. Sometimes you see it labeled as hibiscus flowers, even though technically it's not the flower, it's the outer covering of the flower, the calyx or the calces, I believe they're called. This stuff is a favorite among tea makers for a lot of reasons. One, it's really, really cheap. Two, it brews up almost exactly like cranberry in a hurry. Three, it's widely available, grows all over China, all over North Africa. And four, it turns stuff this awesome red color pretty darn quick. Just in a few seconds of brewing, you're going to get that color out in the beverage, and tea bag makers especially love that. So basically, you're going to have to get yourself some of this. It's really not even a recipe, but I can give you guys some starting proportions that'll get you going. The idea here is that I usually make at least 2 liters, if not 4, 6, or 8, especially during the summer. So I'm going to give you a recipe for a 2-liter batch here. Do get yourself a scale. If you don't have one, you can probably eyeball this recipe eventually, but when you're starting out and you're trying to zero in on your formula, the scale is going to be really helpful, accurate to a gram. So for a 2-liter batch, I'm going in with 10 grams worth of the cut and sifted. I should say this is the cut and sifted forms, kind of broken up little shards. You can also sometimes see the whole flowers. Those work fine, and since we're doing this by weight, it'll be okay. I just get a little bit better infusion out of the broken cut and sifted stuff. You can find this stuff online. It's around up here around $18, $19 Canadian a pound, which is probably top dollar. But that pound is going to make you somewhere in the neighborhood of 90 liters, 90 liters. So it's not very expensive. I did the math, works out to around 23 cents a liter if you're drinking it uncarbonated, or 30 cents a liter if you're carbonating it yourself with the SodaStream. The other place you can find it, if you're clever enough to live near a large Chinatown, they almost always have it in the Chinese grocery stores. And absolutely, if you go into a Chinese apothecary, they're going to have it because, oddly enough, this stuff is good for lowering blood pressure. They've done clinical tests with people in lab coats and the whole 9 yards, and it's really good for you in that regard. I drink it because it's delicious. So to that 10 grams, all I really need now is hot water. But of course, if you're a soda drinker or most beverage drinker, you're going to want some sweetening in there. You can absolutely try some alternatives like honey. Honey works pretty well, although it does change the flavor. I've never been a fan of the artificial sweeteners. I don't like anything concentrated down. The aspartame, the sucralose, the saccharin. Do they even still make saccharin? I don't even like stevia when it's concentrated down as a sweetener, even though I grow the plant. I love the plant and its natural potency, but the concentrated stuff doesn't really work for me. So I'm going to go with old-fashioned sugar because that's what everybody's got. Now, if you're a soda drinker, remember that you're used to something like 100 or 110 grams per liter. There's over 200 grams of sugar in most of those 2-liter pop bottles. There's people out there drinking half their calories. I am not, curiously enough, going to suggest that you drop that sugar level if you're a soda drinker the first time. Because if you drink soda and you immediately try something with half the sugar, you're not going to like it, you're going to give up on it, you're going to walk away and never come back. So if it's your first time out of the gate, go ahead and use 100 grams per liter, 200 grams in this batch. I have actually worked myself down to around 50 grams per liter. So I'm going to go to 100 grams in here for the 2-liter batch. And you know, the next time, the first time you make it, use full sugar. The second time you make it, drop 10 grams off. You probably won't even notice. The third time you make it, drop 15 or 20 grams off, and keep working yourself down. And you know what's going to happen? In a couple months, you're going to look up and realize you're going to grab a regular soda from the fridge and you're going to drink it. It's like, oh my God, this is really, really sweet. If you wean yourself off of it slowly, you'll stick with it. Probably never go back to some of the sodas, at least not as your daily guzzler, as they say. Let me grab some hot water and we'll get this brewing. Like most teas, you want to make sure that the leaves have plenty of room to expand and release their flavor. That's why I don't use a little infuser ball or a little tea dippy strainer thingamabob. Just brew it in a big open stainless steel bowl like that. Now you have to think about concentration. This is a 2-liter batch. I'm only going to put in 500 milliliters of boiling water. That should be plenty in that big vessel to get the infusion that we want. And that's going to leave me 3/4 of the volume of liquid what is that, a liter and a half, to finally finish off the tea to drinking strength, shall we say. I should also tell you a couple other little tidbits that I use. You don't have to, but it certainly seems to be a place to play around with the flavor. This is citric acid. You can get it in wine supply shops, and I only need 2 grams. It just doesn't take much, and that'll add kind of an extra tart edge to it. Sometimes I like it, sometimes I don't. It just depends, but in this case I'm going to go ahead and do that. Of course, you can always add things like lemon and lime. You can use not only the juice, but remember that the peels have a lot of flavor in them, so you can give them a twist, get that in there. I very often use quick cut of ginger or two. In fact, I think I'm going to do that. I've got a little old piece of ginger here. The way I use my ginger, let me get my kettle out of the way. I always bash it, and the best thing in the world to bash ginger and garlic is a 50-cent hockey puck. I am in Canada after all, right? So I just bash it to break up those fibers. Find my trusty knife. We're going to strain this after the fact so you don't have to worry about peeling it. Oh, what is that? I'm going to put in, oh, here, I can tell you, I'm on the scale. I put in 20 grams of ginger. 20 grams of ginger to this batch. You can let this steep for as little as, say, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. What I usually do, though, is I just walk away and let it cool down to room temperature on its own. But before I do that, I want to make sure that I give it a good stir, because that sugar will just sit on the bottom unless you give it a little bit of physical help. Okay, it's been about an hour and that tea has cooled all the way down to room temperature. I'm not going to call this a concentrate or a syrup. It's just not that thick. It's basically just a strong tea. The beauty of most herbal teas is that it's next to impossible to oversteep them. You could leave that in there for 2, 3, 4 hours. You could start it in the morning, come home in the afternoon. You'll be fine doing that. But you do want to go ahead and strain the bits out of it. So in we go, just a big, huge, wide open strainer like that. You can get just a tiny little bit of rinse water if you want to get that last bit of goodness out. And you have your strong tea right there. Remember, this is only 1/4 of the finish. We've got another 1.5 liters of liquid to put in here to make the finished beverage. Now, if I was going to go out to a picnic and I wasn't going to carbonate it, slice up some lemons and oranges and some limes, put it in a big pitcher, top it off to 2 liters, you're good to go there. If you want to do it as a carbonated beverage, though, what I do is I take these repurposed 1-liter bottles and I fill them, 1/4 to 1/3 of the way full, store them in my fridge, and then when I'm ready to carbonate, you don't carbonate this product because with the sugar in it, it would explode and go everywhere. You just fill up one of your regular carbonator bottles, make some soda water, pour that in with your handy dandy funnel, and you've got the fizzy version of my red tonic. I do want to remind everybody that this is a specific species of hibiscus that we're working with here. It's the hibiscus sabradifa. I hope I'm close to correct on the pronunciation there. So if you've got a hibiscus tree growing in your backyard, don't go lop off a branch and start trying to brew pieces of it until you know exactly what species you're working with. You've probably had some hibiscus somewhere along the lines. You just may not have noticed that it was on the ingredient list. I do hope you get some and try to make a formula that puts you back in control of what's going into your drinks, whether you're sweetening it with sugar or honey or agave or unicorn tears, whatever you got. Try some of the extra flavors. Try it as a non-carbonated cooler beverage. Try it as a fizzy beverage. I guarantee you it's delicious just about every way you cut it. I do appreciate you liking and thumbs upping and mashing those buttons down below. If you really like what you see, hit that subscribe button because those numbers are very, very important to me. And as always, if you got a few seconds to spare, I greatly appreciate you watching whatever ad rolls after this because that really does help me keep making this stuff for you. Until next time, I'm Mr. Spork. These are Mr. Spork's hands, and now I'm going to go have a drink. Cheers.